The wind howled across the open plains of Montana, rattling the windows of my family's homestead, Willow Creek Farm. I'm Ethan Caldwell, 38, a widower raising 2 kids on this stretch of land my great-grandparents carved out a century ago. For decades, we lived in quiet harmony with the nearby Crestwood Estates, a gated community of polished lawns and pretentious mailboxes. We'd trade nods at the gas station, lend a hand during snowstorms, even share our well water when their pumps failed. But 3 years ago, when Margaret Hensley took over as president of the Crestwood HOA, that fragile peace shattered like glass under a boot. What began as neighborly courtesy spiraled into a feud that would test my limits and force me to draw a line in the dirt, one that would spark a firestorm nobody saw coming. It started small, as these things often do. Margaret, a former corporate lawyer with a penchant for power suits, began sending friendly reminders about my property's appearance. My barn's faded red paint was an eyesore. My tractor parked by the road violated their visual harmony code. My kid's tire swing was, apparently, a safety hazard. Her second-in-command, Victor Klein, a wiry accountant with a clipboard permanently glued to his hand, would show up unannounced, measuring my fence posts or sniffing around my alfalfa fields like he owned them. The rest of the HOA board spineless yes-men followed Margaret's lead without question. I ignored them at first. My farm was my kingdom, and their rules didn't apply beyond their gated enclave. But then the demands escalated. They mailed official notices, citing odor nuisances from my horses and excessive noise from my old diesel truck. One evening, Margaret herself appeared at my doorstep, demanding I remove my beehives because their buzzing disrupted her book club. I stared, half amused, and said, "Margaret, this is a farm. Bees make honey. Maybe your book club needs thicker walls." She left, lips pursed, but I knew she was plotting. She didn't disappoint. The HOA began patrolling the boundary between my farm and their community, snapping photos, interrogating my farmhands, even calling the county about my kids flying kites too close to their airspace. I stayed calm, but when my daughter's 10th birthday came around, I decided we'd celebrate like always: bonfire, music, friends, and a potluck under the stars. I never imagined Margaret and Victor would barge in, waving their bylaws, claiming our music violated their quiet hours. They threatened to call the sheriff. My neighbors froze, kids wide-eyed. I didn't shout. I smiled, leaned in, and said, "You're on my land now. Leave, or I'll escort you myself." They left, but the gauntlet was thrown. I remembered a tidbit from my lawyer, Sarah, about a vacant lot the HOA used for their annual Crestwood Carnival. It wasn't public land, it was private, owned by a trust tied to an old rancher in Wyoming. I made some calls, tracked him down, and learned he was fed up with the HOA's demands to pave his lot for parking. Over coffee and a Zoom call, I bought the lot for a fair price. 2 weeks later, I held the title to Crestwood Meadow, and the HOA had no clue. I waited until their carnival day, when tents were up and Margaret was strutting around in a chairwoman's sash. I drove up, locked the gate, and hung a sign in blazing orange, "Private property. No HOA access." Margaret's face turned the color of her sash. "Ethan Caldwell, you can't do this," she shrieked, her voice echoing across the silenced fair. I held up the deed, calm as ever. "I own this lot now. You're trespassing." Victor stammered about community precedent. I waved the seal in his face. "Private land, Victor. No precedent applies." I turned and left, their carnival crumbling behind me. The next morning, my farm felt eerily still. The scent of last night's bonfire lingered, but something darker hung in the air. At dawn, Margaret's Lexus pulled up, followed by Victor's sedan and a new face, Ellen, a recent HOA board addition who looked more like a Pilates coach than a bureaucrat. They stood at my gate, glaring. Margaret stormed forward, clutching a folder. "Ethan, this is illegal. That lot's been ours for years. You're violating community rights." I sipped my coffee, Scout, my collie at my feet. "Morning, Margaret." "Victor." "Ellen, welcome to the madness." I smirked. "Violating rights? On land I legally own." Victor pushed his glasses up, citing implied public use. I laughed. "Implied? So just feelings, no contract." Ellen bit her lip, stifling a grin, as Margaret brandished her folder, claiming years of event records proved their claim. I didn't tip my hand yet. You crashed my daughter's birthday, I said, stepping closer. Now you're trying to bully me on my own farm? Margaret snapped. This is about fairness. I leaned in. No, it's about you learning what it feels like to lose control. They didn't stop. Notices piled up, accusing me of unlawful closure. Social media lit up with posts. Farmer locks out families. One claimed my horses were a public health risk. A county inspector arrived, citing fence complaints. I handed over my deed and surveys, grinning. Expected you. He left, finding no violations. But then family's real folks, not HOA drones, showed up at the locked lot. Like Maria, a widow whose kids I taught to ride. I let them in, non-HOA only, turning the lot into a sanctuary for honest neighbors. Kids played, guitars strummed, and joy returned. Then the HOA struck harder. I woke to a chainsaw's whine. Outside my fence, HOA workers were erecting a 10-foot sign. Warning, this property endangers community standards. Margaret appeared, smug as ever. Just a public service announcement. Rage surged, but I kept cool. You want a war? I whispered. Game on. I called my buddy, Ray, a welder. Build me a 15-foot steel frame, stormproof, with tech space. 2 days later, it towered beside their sign, lit by floodlights. No HOA here. Respect the land or stay out. Etched below were their violations: fund misuse, trespassing, harassment with legal citations. Car stopped to stare. Victor showed up, muttering about defamation. I handed him proof. Matching your energy, I said. Margaret arrived with a newsletter crew, threatening lawsuits. I countered with evidence of their trespassing and budget fraud. She paled but didn't back down. Then my water pump was sabotaged, pipes cut, motor fried. My cameras caught a figure in a hoodie at 3:14 a.m., fleeing toward Crestwood. I reported it, but the sheriff said evidence was shaky. So, I turned the empty lot into a free folks festival, barring HOA members. Over 250 people came: food, music, kids with sparklers. Victor tried sneaking in, but I spotted him. Not welcome, I said. As the night glowed, Margaret and cops arrived, citing noise. I pointed out we were outside their jurisdiction. Any leads on my pump? I asked, eyeing her. She flinched, but left. A week later, a legal letter arrived, accusing me of community disruption and threatening eminent domain. Sarah called it a bluff, but urged vigilance. I met with a county ally, Tom, and a reporter, Claire, exposing the HOA's tactics. I launched a live stream, Farm Watch, HOA free, and a site, SaveOurMeadowMT.com, with my deeds and their violations. Thousands watched. Then my barn's power went out, wires slashed, footprints leading to Crestwood. Footage showed a shadowed figure. Claire's headline screamed, HOA sabotages farmers' power. It went viral. At a town hall, Margaret pushed to rezone the lot as a community asset. I presented proof: no lease, just casual use. Ellen, a board member, admitted Margaret acted alone. The county rejected her claim. I thought we'd won until Ellen revealed a new petition, not from Margaret, but from my friend Nate, a Crestwood resident with developer ties. He claimed my farm's edge violated a 1980s zoning line, eyeing it for a land grab. I found old surveys proving Crestwood encroached on my land. I filed to reclaim it as a public path, HOA free. Claire's article exposed Nate's scheme, and 3 board members quit. Then, smoke rose from the lot. Flames tore through the grass. We fought them: hoses, shovels, sweat until they died. The sheriff confirmed arson. Ellen found a scorched HOA memo in Nate's trash, linking him to the fire. I called a final gathering at the lot. Over 400 came, even Margaret. I showed the evidence, named Nate, and announced the lot's transfer to a public trust free for all. The crowd roared. Margaret slipped away, defeated. As stars lit the sky, I knew we'd reclaimed more than land, we'd reclaimed respect. If they try to cage you, buy the cage and set it free. Stand tall. Share your fight.